First contact and fatal mistake. Commander Elena Reyes stood at the observation deck of the Earth vessel Concordia, watching the chrysalid flagship emerge from the nebula like a creature from ancient mythology. Its bioorganic hull rippled with patterns of bioluminescence, dwarfing her ship with its massive, crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral Jackson's voice carried across the deck. Hard to believe we've been at war with them for 3 years. Elena nodded, adjusting her diplomatic sash. After 15 years as Earth's premier xenodiplomat, she thought she'd seen everything. The chrysalids proved her wrong. Their society, their technology, their very biology defied human understanding. Yet here she was, chosen to negotiate peace with a species that communicated as much through pheromones as words. The latest casualty reports came in, Jackson continued, his weathered face grim. We lost another colony in the Rigel sector. If we don't end this war soon. We will, Elena assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The chrysalids had requested her specifically for these negotiations, refusing all other diplomats. Their only explanation, her resonance pattern, was compatible with their needs. The shuttle ride to the chrysalid vessel felt eternal. Elena reviewed her briefing files one last time, though she'd memorized them weeks ago. The chrysalids were a hive-based species, their society structured around massive colony ships. Their leadership caste, the luminous ones, possessed powerful psychic abilities and near immortality. Yet despite their advantages, they sought peace now with an urgency that made Earth's military leaders suspicious. As her shuttle passed through the flagship's membrane-like docking bay, Elena felt a subtle shift in her consciousness. The chrysalid psychic field was stronger than she'd expected. Her neural dampeners should protect her from direct manipulation, but the ambient energy still made her skin tingle. A delegation awaited her, led by a towering figure whose iridescent carapace shifted colors like oil on water. Prince Tar, first offspring of the chrysalid queen. His presence was unexpected, the royal family rarely dealt directly with other species. Commander Reyes, Tar's voice resonated in her mind even as his mandibles moved. Your arrival fulfills prophecies written in the time of my great-grandmother's emergence. Elena bowed slightly, following protocol. Your Highness, I come seeking peace between our peoples. Peace? Tar's antennae twitched in what her training suggested was amusement. Oh, Commander. You come for so much more than mere peace. Before Elena could respond, a wave of dizziness struck her. The neural dampeners, something was wrong. She stumbled, caught by Tar's attendants as her vision blurred. The compatibility is even stronger than our seers predicted, Tar said, his mental voice tinged with satisfaction. The Queen will be most pleased. Elena tried to protest, to reach for her emergency beacon, but her limbs wouldn't respond. As consciousness faded, she realized with horrible clarity, this wasn't a peace negotiation. It was a trap. And she had walked right into it, bringing humanity's last hope for peace with her. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Tar's faceted eyes, reflecting her own terrified face back at her like a fractured mirror. In them, she saw not the malice she expected, but something far more troubling, desperate hope. When Elena awoke, she found herself in a chamber that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Bioluminescent patterns danced across walls that appeared to be made of living tissue. She was lying on a bed of something like silk, but it responded to her movements as if alive. Her head pounded, but her thoughts were clear now. The neural dampeners had been removed, she could feel the chrysalid psychic field fully now, pressing against her consciousness like a vast ocean against a fragile shore. You are resistant, Tar's voice came from behind her. Most species would be overwhelmed by now. It is one of many reasons you were chosen. Elena sat up slowly, fighting vertigo. Chosen for what? To save both our species. Tar moved into view, his carapace now a deep, somber blue. My mother, the Queen, is dying. Without new genetic material to diversify our royal lineage, the entire chrysalid species will follow within a generation. And you, Commander Reyes, carry within you something we desperately need. I don't understand, Elena said, though a horrible suspicion was beginning to form. The war was never about territory or resources, Tar explained. It was a test, to find beings strong enough to help us evolve. And you, Elena Reyes, have proven yourself beyond all others. You will be the first human to join the chrysalid royal lineage, through a union that will either save or destroy both our civilizations. Elena stared at him, the full implications hitting her like a physical blow. She wasn't here to negotiate peace. She was here to become part of their species' desperate bid for survival. And somewhere in the back of her mind, past the shock and anger, a small voice whispered that this might be humanity's only chance to end the war, if she could survive what was to come. The chamber's lights pulsed faster, matching her racing heartbeat, as if the very ship was alive and aware of the momentous change about to unfold within its living walls. Elena Reyes, diplomat of Earth, was about to become something else entirely, if she could find a way to turn this trap into an opportunity for both species' survival. The price of peace. The royal hive thrummed with anticipation. Elena watched from her chambers as thousands of chrysalids moved through the crystalline corridors like streams of liquid metal. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and she was no longer a prisoner, at least, not in the traditional sense. The entire ship was her cage now, beautiful and terrible in its alien majesty. "The Queen requests your presence," announced Vexare, her assigned attendant. The smaller chrysalid's carapace shimmered with patterns that Elena had learned indicated nervousness. The joining ceremony preparations must begin. Elena straightened her newly provided robes, a flowing garment that seemed to be made from living tissue, constantly adjusting its temperature and fit to her comfort. "And if I refuse? Then both our species will suffer the consequences of continued war," Vexare's antennae drooped. "Surely you've seen the reports. The death toll rises daily." She had. Every morning, updates arrived from both sides of the conflict. Colonies destroyed, ships lost, millions displaced. The chrysalid's desperate gambit for survival had cost both species dearly. Yet something about their story didn't quite add up. The walk to the Queen's chamber took them through the heart of the living ship. Elena had learned to read the subtle changes in the bioluminescent patterns around her. They reflected the collective mood of the chrysalid hive. Today, they pulsed with an anxious rhythm she hadn't seen before. Prince Tar waited outside the Queen's chamber, his usually pristine carapace showing signs of stress fractures. "Commander Reyes. Before we enter, there is something you should know. The situation is more complex than I first indicated." "When isn't it?" Elena had spent her time well, building relationships with the hive's workers, piecing together fragments of information. "Your mother isn't just dying, is she? This is about succession." Tar's antennae twitched in surprise. "You are perceptive." "Yes. Without new genetic material, the next generation of queens will be sterile. But there are those who would rather see our species end than dilute our bloodline with foreign elements." The chamber doors parted like living flesh, revealing a vast cathedral-like space. The Queen's massive form dominated the center, her crystalline throne seeming to grow directly from the floor. But it was the other figures in the room that caught Elena's attention, a dozen chrysalid nobles, their carapaces bearing the marks of the most ancient bloodlines. "So," the Queen's voice resonated directly in Elena's mind, powerful enough to make her knees buckle. "This is the human who would dare join the royal lineage." One of the nobles stepped forward, his carapace a deep crimson. "My Queen, this is blasphemy. The prophecies speak of strengthening our blood, not tainting it with lesser species." "Lesser?" Elena straightened, her diplomatic training warring with anger. "Your war has cost us millions of lives. If we're so lesser, why did you need to test us? Why choose us at all?" The chamber fell silent. Even the ship's ambient hum seemed to quiet, waiting. Because, the Queen's voice held a note of amusement, you are the first species we've encountered who could resist our psychic influence. Your minds are uniquely compatible with ours, yet independent. The perfect balance we need. Perfect or not, another noble interjected, the joining ceremony requires the spark of creation. No human could possibly survive that level of psychic energy. Elena caught Tara's subtle shift in posture. There it was, the piece they'd been hiding. The ceremony itself might kill her, and they knew it. But they were desperate enough to try anyway. Unless, Tar spoke carefully, we modify the ancient rites. Adapt them, as we must adapt to survive. The chamber erupted in outrage. Nobles clicked and chittered, their colors shifting rapidly through patterns of anger and shock. Elena watched them, remembering her xenodiplomacy training. Species on the brink of extinction often cling hardest to their traditions, even when those very traditions threaten their survival. Enough. The Queen's command slammed into their minds like a physical force. Commander Reyes, you understand now the true price of peace. Not just marriage, but transformation. The joining ceremony will either remake you into something new, a bridge between our species, or it will destroy you. The choice must be yours. Elena looked around the chamber, seeing the future of two species balanced on her decision. The war had begun as the chrysalids' desperate search for compatible genetic material, but it could end with something unprecedented, true symbiosis between humans and chrysalids. Before I decide, Elena said, her voice steady, I want access to your genetic research. All of it. And I want to communicate with Earth. If we're going to change the future of both our species, we need to do it right. The Queen's massive form shifted, crystal chiming softly. You bargain even now, human. With your life at stake. I'm a diplomat, Elena smiled slightly. It's what we do. Very well, the Queen's response held an edge of respect. You have 3 days to review our data and make your choice. But know this, the ceremony must be performed before the next stellar alignment. If you refuse, the war will continue, and both our species will suffer. As Elena left the chamber, Tar fell into step beside her. You realize, he said quietly, that even if you survive the ceremony, you'll never be fully human again. Maybe that's the point, Elena replied, watching the ship's walls pulse with new patterns, hope mixed with fear. Maybe the future needs something new. Something neither human nor chrysalid, but both. She had 3 days to find a way to survive the impossible, transform an ancient ceremony, and convince both species to accept a fundamental change to their existence. As she returned to her chambers, Elena began planning. The fate of two civilizations rested on what happened next, and she was done being a passive participant in their game. The ship's lights dimmed to match the artificial night cycle, but Elena knew she wouldn't sleep. Somewhere in the chrysalids' genetic research lay the key to survival, not just hers, but everyone's. She just had to find it before time ran out. Secrets of the Hive. Elena's eyes burned as she studied another set of genetic data scrolling across the living display. 2 days had passed since her audience with the Queen, and what she'd discovered in the chrysalids' research archives chilled her to the bone. The truth was far worse than anyone had imagined. You've barely rested, Tar observed, entering her research chamber. His carapace had taken on a deep violet hue that she'd learned to associate with concern. The ceremony is tomorrow. You'll need your strength. Look at this, Elena gestured to the displays. Your species didn't just start dying out recently. This was engineered, thousands of years ago. Tar's antennae went rigid. Explain. Your ancestors modified your genetic code to achieve perfect unity, the hive mind, the biological technology, all of it. But they made a crucial mistake. Elena brought up a complex molecular diagram. They created a genetic lock that would prevent random mutations, ensuring the purity of the bloodline. Except. It worked too well, Tar finished, his mental voice heavy with revelation. We stopped evolving entirely. Elena nodded grimly. Your species is perfectly adapted to conditions that no longer exist. The stellar radiation in this sector of space has changed over millennia, slowly poisoning your genetic structure. The sterility in the royal bloodline is just the first symptom. The chamber's walls pulsed with patterns reflecting Tara's distress. Why wasn't this discovered sooner? Because your scientists were looking for the wrong thing. They thought introducing new genetic material would solve the problem, but that's just a temporary fix. Elena pulled up another display. The joining ceremony isn't just about creating hybrid offspring, it's about breaking the genetic lock itself. A sound like crystalline wind chimes filled the room as Tar processed this information. The nobles who oppose this, they don't know. Or they do, and they'd rather see your species die, pure, than survive through change. Elena stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of research. But there's something else. Something about human DNA specifically that. The chamber's entrance suddenly rippled open. Vexare burst in, her carapace flashing urgent patterns. My prince. The queen, she's entered final metamorphosis early. Tara's color drained to pale blue. Impossible. We should have had weeks. The degradation is accelerating, Elena realized. The genetic lock is finally failing completely. Without a successful joining ceremony before she completes metamorphosis, the succession will fail. Tara's mental voice carried an edge of panic. The hive will fragment. Millions will die as the psychic network collapses. Elena's mind raced. She hadn't completed her analysis of the ceremony's effects on human physiology. Going in blind could kill her. But waiting meant certain disaster for the chrysalids. How long? She asked. Hours at most, Vexare replied. The nobles are already gathering. Some are calling for immediate war with Earth, claiming humans have somehow poisoned the queen. Then we don't wait for tomorrow. Elena began gathering data crystals. We do the ceremony now, but we modify it based on what I've learned. Tar, I need you to trust me completely. What I'm proposing has never been done before. Tar's antennae quivered. The nobles will resist. The nobles don't understand what's really at stake. Elena's voice was firm. This isn't just about saving the chrysalid species anymore. If your hive mind collapses violently, the psychic backlash could drive every telepathically sensitive species in this sector insane. Including humans. The ship itself seemed to tremble as the queen's condition deteriorated. Through the chamber's walls, Elena could see increased activity in the hive, colors and patterns shifting chaotically as panic spread through the collective consciousness. What do you need? Tar asked. Access to the ceremony chamber. And your word that no matter what happens, what I discover will be shared with both our species. Elena held his alien gaze. No more secrets. No more tests. We survive together or not at all. Tara's carapace shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, resolute gold. You have it. But Elena, the ceremony was dangerous before. Modifying it adds even more risk. Life is risk, Elena managed a smile. Isn't that why your species chose humans in the first place? Because we take chances you won't. As they hurried through the living corridors of the ship, Elena's mind worked furiously. The genetic data suggested a possible solution, not just to save the chrysalids, but to transform them. If she was right, the same human genetic adaptability that allowed resistance to psychic influence could be the key to breaking the ancient lock without destroying the chrysalids' essential nature. But if she was wrong. The ceremony chamber doors parted to reveal chaos. Nobles argued in clicking streams of sound and psychic energy while attendants rushed to attend the queen's massive, shimmering cocoon. The air crackled with tension and power. Time to change history, Elena muttered, squaring her shoulders. Again. She just hoped she'd live long enough to see if she was changing it for the better. Revolution in the stars. The ceremony chamber erupted into chaos the moment Elena revealed her findings. Chrysalid nobles flashed colors of rage and disbelief, their psychic projections filling the air with crackling energy. Blasphemy! The crimson carapaced noble from before, Lord Vexthor, pointed an accusing limb at Elena. She seeks to destroy our very essence with these modifications. Our essence is already being destroyed. Tara's mental voice cut through the chaos. The genetic lot that you revere as sacred was a mistake, one that's killing us all. The queen's cocoon pulsed with weakening bioluminescence. Around them, the ship's walls began to show signs of stress, organic crystals cracking as the hive mind's stability deteriorated. Elena stood her ground, clutching the data crystals. Your own research proves it. The lock wasn't meant to be permanent, it was meant to be broken and reformed with each generation. Your ancestors just forgot how. Then we die with dignity, another noble declared, rather than become hybrid abominations. The word struck like a physical blow, but Elena didn't flinch. She'd anticipated this reaction. What she hadn't anticipated was the sudden movement from the shadows, guards, their carapaces midnight black, surrounding the ceremony platform. The Queen's Guard, Tara's color paled. They've sided with the conservatives. Elena's hand went to her neck, where her emergency beacon lay hidden beneath her robes. One signal and the Earth fleet would launch an assault, but that would mean war. Everything she'd worked for would be lost. Wait. A new voice cut through the chamber. Vexare pushed through the crowd, her small form radiating determination. Show them, Elena. Show them what you showed me. With trembling hands, Elena activated her final piece of evidence. The chamber's organic displays came alive with images from Earth's genetic archives, human DNA sequences spanning thousands of years. Look at the pattern, Elena commanded. Humans didn't just resist your psychic influence by accident. We evolved that ability, the same way we've evolved to survive countless challenges. Our DNA doesn't just adapt, it remembers how to adapt. The displays shifted, showing the complex interplay between human and chrysalid genetic structures. The joining ceremony won't destroy your essence, it will teach it how to change again. To evolve without breaking. A ripple of uncertainty passed through the nobles. The Queen's Guard held their positions, but their colors showed confusion. Then the cocoon cracked. Everyone froze as a tendril of pure psychic energy lashed out from the Queen's metamorphosing form. It struck Elena like lightning, dropping her to her knees. But instead of pain, she felt connection. They speak truth, the Queen's voice echoed in every mind present. I have seen, so much, in this change. Our fate was never to remain static. We were meant to grow. Lord Vexthor raised his ceremonial staff. She's delirious from the metamorphosis. Guards, stop this ceremony before. He never finished. Tar moved with blinding speed, his royal guards following suit. In moments, the conservative faction was contained, their weapons neutralized. The ceremony begins now, Tar declared, helping Elena to her feet. Any who interfere will be considered traitors to the survival of our species. Elena's vision swam as the Queen's psychic energy continued to course through her. The connection was showing her things, memories not her own, generations of chrysalid history, the truth of their original purpose. The platform, she gasped. Help me to the platform. Tar supported her as they ascended the crystalline steps. The ceremony platform was a marvel of bioengineering, its surface swimming with complex patterns that responded to their presence. The modifications, Elena fought to focus. The sequence has to be perfect. Her hands flew over the living controls, implementing the changes she'd discovered in her research. The platform began to hum with power, its crystals resonating with frequencies that made her bones vibrate. Elena, Tara's mental voice was gentle. Are you certain? There's no going back from this. She looked up at him, seeing not an alien prince but a fellow being fighting for survival. There's no going back for any of us. Sometimes evolution requires a leap of faith. The queen's cocoon cracked further, psychic energy flooding the chamber. Elena felt her consciousness expanding, connecting with the vast network of the hive mind. But unlike before, she wasn't drowning in it. Her mind remained her own, even as it reached out to touch millions of others. Now, she plunged her hands into the platform's crystalline surface. Energy surged through her body as the modified ceremony began. She was dimly aware of Tar joining her, his own genetic pattern merging with hers in ways that defied conventional science. The conservative nobles watched in horror and fascination as Elena's DNA began to change, not breaking but evolving, teaching the chrysalid genetic pattern how to adapt once more. The ship itself seemed to pulse with the power of the transformation. Through it all, Elena held on to one thought: this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Humanity and the chrysalids would never be the same after this moment. They would be something new, something that could face the future together. As consciousness began to fade, she heard the queen's final metamorphic thought: the age of isolation is over. The age of adaptation begins. The chamber erupted in light, and Elena Reyes ceased to be what she was, but what she would become remained to be seen. Unity's dawn. Consciousness returned slowly, like light filtering through deep water. Elena opened her eyes, all of them. The thought should have startled her, but somehow it felt natural, right? Her new body was both familiar and strange, human form enhanced with crystalline structures that pulsed with bioluminescence. The transformation was successful. Tar's mental voice reached her, now as clear as spoken words. He too had changed, his carapace now containing swirls of human DNA patterns that glowed with inner light. How do you feel? Connected, Elena answered, marveling at how her voice carried both sound and psychic resonance. But still myself. The genetic lock is broken. More than broken. The queen's new form dominated the chamber, magnificent and strange. Like Elena, she had become something between human and chrysalid, her vast consciousness now tempered with human adaptability. You've given us back our future. 3 days had passed since the ceremony. The conservative faction, led by Lord Vexthor, had been contained but not punished. Elena had insisted on that. They would need every perspective to navigate the changes ahead. The ship's walls rippled with new patterns as information flowed through the modified hive mind. Unlike before, it wasn't a crushing unity but a symphony of individual voices, each contributing to the whole while maintaining their unique identity. The Earth fleet is requesting contact, Vexra announced, her own form now showing subtle signs of the change that was spreading through the entire species. They detected the energy surge from the ceremony. They're concerned. Elena smiled. Open a channel. They should see exactly what their diplomat has become. The communication crystal activated, projecting Admiral Jackson's weathered face. He took one look at Elena and his jaw dropped. Commander Reyes? What in God's name? Still me, Admiral, Elena assured him. Though the title of commander might need updating. We have a lot to discuss. Over the next hour, Elena explained everything: the genetic lock, the ceremony, and most importantly, the opportunity it presented. The chrysalid's biological technology combined with human adaptability could revolutionize both civilizations. This is unprecedented, Jackson said finally. The Joint Chiefs will need time to process this. Time we now have, Elena nodded. The war is over, Admiral. Neither side needs to fight anymore. We found a better way. As if to emphasize her point, a wave of information washed through the hive mind, reports from across chrysalid space. The genetic changes were spreading naturally through the population, each individual's transformation unique but harmonious with the whole. Some remained mostly chrysalid in appearance, others adopted more human characteristics, but all were part of something greater than either species had been alone. There will be resistance, Tar observed after the communication ended. On both sides. Of course, Elena touched the crystalline structures that now grew from her shoulders like elegant wings. Change is never easy. But it's necessary. Look. She gestured to the displays showing long-range sensor data. The stellar radiation that had been slowly poisoning the chrysalids was still present, but their new hybrid biology was already adapting to it. More importantly, the combined knowledge of both species was revealing new possibilities, ways to terraform hostile worlds, heal damaged ecosystems, extend life itself. We're not just saving our species, Elena continued. We're opening the door to saving others. The galaxy is full of civilizations facing their own genetic dead ends. We can help them. The Queen's consciousness brushed against hers, approving. And in helping them, continue our own evolution. This was always the true purpose of the joining ceremony, not to preserve, but to transform. Lord Vex Thor, still under guard but present for the discussion, finally spoke. Our ancestors would not recognize what we have become. No, Elena agreed. They wouldn't. That's the point. Evolution isn't about recognition, it's about survival through change. And thanks to our union, both our species will survive to become something extraordinary. The ship hummed with new energy as preparations began for the next phase. Earth would need to be convinced, diplomatic channels established, and a framework created for managing the transformation on a larger scale. But the hard part was done. The barrier between species had been broken, not through war but through understanding and sacrifice. Elena moved to the observation deck where her journey had begun, Tar at her side. The stars looked different through her new eyes, not distant points of light, but a vast network of possibilities. She could feel the subtle gravitational waves, the cosmic radiation, the very pulse of space itself. Having doubts? Tar asked, sensing her contemplation. No, Elena smiled, her bioluminescence shifting to patterns of certainty and hope. Having dreams. Big ones. The future stretched before them, unlimited by the constraints of single-species evolution. Humanity would contribute its endless adaptability, its drive to explore and change. The chrysalids would bring their biological mastery, their ability to connect and cooperate on vast scales. Together, they would forge something entirely new. As the ship prepared to depart for Earth, carrying its cargo of transformation and hope, Elena felt the truth in her very genes: this wasn't an end to either humanity or the chrysalids. It was the beginning of something far greater. A future where the boundaries between species were not walls but bridges, where adaptation and cooperation replaced conflict and stagnation. The age of isolation was truly over. The age of unity had begun.